It's the Ode to Joy theme from the last movement of Beethoven's 9th Symphony. You've probably heard a little brother or an older sister pluck it out on the piano before. Maybe you've done it yourself. It's quite easy to do because all the notes are next to each other. And Beethoven wrote it that way. It's easy to play, it's easy to sing. It sounds like the kind of tune that you've known your whole life. A folk song maybe, a popular song, a children's song. My name's Mathew. I'm a professor here in the music department at UC Berkeley. So any performance of Beethoven's 9th Symphony is a bit of a production. There's a massive orchestra on stage and there's a chorus too, and most people are waiting for the moment when the chorus comes in. But there are 3 movements before the chorus does, and there's quite a lot to listen out for in those. For one, it's got a very strange beginning. In fact, it's the kind of beginning that you might choose if you hadn't appeared before the public in a long time, which is true of Beethoven. It was nearly 10 years earlier that he'd given his last big public concert. And understandably, this particularly grand piece seemed to require a particularly grand build-up, almost throat clearing. One thing that you might notice as the orchestra begins this piece is it doesn't start with a big tune, a grand gesture, something to grab your attention. Instead, it starts with something unformed, as if you're inside Beethoven's head, maybe inside Beethoven's workshop, as he gradually comes up with the idea for this new immense piece. It almost sounds for a moment as if the orchestra is still tuning up until eventually, slowly, it will congeal into a big, grand orchestral gesture, the kind of thing that reminds you an enormous symphony has begun. Most people don't realise that in Beethoven's time, many concerts featured choruses, often as a grand finale. So in a sense, Beethoven's 9th Symphony is only describing the typical trajectory of an evening out, one that starts with lots of interesting instrumental numbers and ends with a rousing chorus that everyone can feel that they're joining in with. Some of you may know the Ode to Joy because you've sung it in church, or you've sung it in school, or it's had new words put to it as a school song or a sporting anthem. And that's partly because it's so easy to sing. He wrote it to be an anthem. In fact, he wrote it during the period when national anthems were becoming popular, when everyone needed to have their own song as a way to build community and stick collectives more closely together. The influence of Beethoven's 9th Symphony on all the music that came after was immense. In fact, in the 19th century, it became an item of prestige to have composed a great symphony that coalesces in the end into a memorable tune or perhaps a great chorus. Mendelssohn did so in his 2nd Symphony, the so-called Lobgesang. Brahms's 1st Symphony, which took him decades to write, famously ends with a melody that is so similar to the Ode to Joy you could sing it at the same time and make quite nice harmonies. Apparently, when it was pointed out to him by someone in the audience that it sounded very like the 9th Symphony, he replied, "Any jackass can hear that." The great German opera composer Richard Wagner claimed that the 9th Symphony invented all German opera, was the basis for the genre that he described as Musikdrama. And Mahler was so obsessed with Beethoven's 9th that he used to boast, "All of my symphonies are 9ths." The UC Berkeley Symphony Orchestra and Chorus will be performing Beethoven's 9th Symphony on November the 7th and 8th. We'd love it if you could join us.